2 minutes after 1 a.m. It is Power Zone, Power 987. My name is Pretty Ngwenya, standing in for Katlego during the course of this week. We are now getting into our conversation of the morning where we speak about the US-SA relations. Thabiso Maphosa, political scientist, now joins us on the line to unpack this conversation with us. A very good morning to you, Thabiso. Thank you so much for your time and welcome to Power Zone.
Good morning, Sister Pretty, and good morning to the Power listeners.
Thabiso, I think there's been so many mixed reactions when it comes to the conversation of the Oval Office. So much has been said. So many allegations have also been put out there. Let's speak about the importance of the relationship and the journey that our president has embarked on to the Washington, D.C. What are we trying to accomplish when we speak about relations with the U.S. and South Africa?
Looking at the relationship between the U.S. and South Africa, what has happened in the Oval Office has sparked tension across the globe, and looking at how the geopolitical has been happening and things have been going about. But looking at how things have unfolded at the Oval Office, we see South Africa went there to strengthen its economic ties and the relationship with the U.S. But however, when they got there, what they found being proposed on the table was something that was not something they prepared for. So in a nutshell, I would say that what happened in the Oval Office was South Africa trying to talk to the US about how small organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity Group has continued to spray misinformation about the issues of genocide in South Africa. However, on the other hand, we had the President Donald Trump saying that South Africa has continued to show more interest in countries like China, India and Iran, which are anti-Western. So what has happened in the Oval Office has shown a conflict of interest in what has happened in the sixth administration. When we saw the ANC as a leading government, they supported the Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war. They took Israel to the ICJ, showing again the US that their interests are based on supporting BRICS member countries rather than looking at its foreign policy and relationship with US.
One of the three black spots that are quite visible on the white sheet is the ICJ, BRICS, and Starlink. Why would these three really be sticking points?
Remember when we look at how BRICS continues to support African countries, how South Africa play a crucial role. And remember, South Africa is the second largest exporter of USA, and their trading relation is one that has always been good. But however, how China, Russia, and other member states of BRICS continue to fight, or rather do not support the US policies. So whatever that continues to happen is that America finds itself standing alone in the West and fighting against most of the countries in the Southern Hemisphere and those in Asia. But however, they continue to dictate, as much as they're the powerhouse country in the world, they continue to dictate how things should be run. Remember the dollar, remember we trade using it, remember South Africa as it stands now, more than 60% of things that are being manufactured, your tech companies, and in the mining sector, we are trading with America, and America is one country that continues to have more power on South Africa. So our relationship with America and our relationship with our BRICS partner, we see that there's a conflict of interest whereby America sees that South Africa now tends to support the BRICS country than its relationship with America. So another one on the ICJ, remember when Naledi Pandor was the Minister of International Relations, she mentioned how we will not be bullied, we will protect our sovereignty and make sure that we stand with Palestine. Remember Palestine, remember Israel. We had to take a side, and our side was with the Palestinians. We then decided to go to ICJ and say we are taking Israel to ICJ for a genocide. Therefore, America, as a country that was supplying and supporting Israel, it saw this as a conflict of interest as much as with Russia and Ukraine. We stood with Russia, and they also saw that as an attack on its foreign policy and the conflict of interest. Therefore, we remained in between, but however, we chose to do what is right as much as our foreign policy speaks of the Batupili and Ubuntu principles.
I think when you explain this, it almost feels like there's a threat that is being felt by the U.S. when it comes to the relationships of South Africa. BRICS is included in this relationship as well. Maybe also just give us some sort of highlights with Starlink as well when it comes to some of those sticking points.
Remember, South Africa went there to also propose a reviewed policy on their economic ties. Mm-hmm. But however, with Starlink, many are not agreeing or supporting the Starlink to come to South Africa because many have different views of which, for now, I could say the left parties within South Africa see it as a form of what they call, remember they will be using AI and also the use of internet and Wi-Fi. So they see this as a form of colonization, but not like the one that happened in the past. But this time around it's happening whereby they would have to capture your data. They will control or know most of your moves. So with Starlink and the so-called proposed, how they propose their what they want in South Africa for the next 10 years, I don't know whether to say those are speculations or there's a full document, because I've also seen on X where I tried to view another document that was posted by the minister and the president. I couldn't find it anymore, but with Starlink, I feel like it's a threat to South Africa's sovereignty and how they want to control power on part of our military. Remember when they control power of our military with Starlink, that means our sovereignty will be compromised and they will have access to information and see how things are done within South Africa.
Do you not feel like, Thabiso, we're already in that umbrella of control?
For now, I feel like we are in that umbrella of control, but we are inside with one foot. We are not inside 100%. So if ever we go inside 100%, then we'll find ourselves with our sovereignty being compromised. As much as we have had how the U.S. has introduced the U.S.-South African Bilateral Relations Review Act of 2005. So remember how that bill also continues to have a thread on how they are going to sanction some of South African officials if ever it is to go through and pass. And remember such things. The USA is one country that is known for threatening other countries. Remember at this stage we also have the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which will come to an expiration in September 2025. So at this moment, that is also another thing that the Americans are threatening South Africa with, that if we do not reach certain economic deals or ties, we are then going to let go of South Africa as part and parcel of the AGOA.
I want us to get into AGOA, but before we get into that, let's take a call from Jerry in Letlabile, and he wants to engage in this conversation as well. Jerry, a very good morning to you. Warm welcome to Power 987.
Good morning, my sister and Augusta. I did not get your name, but it looks like you are a DJ. Is that you?
Are you speaking about me, Jerry?
Yes, I did not get your name.
My name is Pretty Ngwenya.
Oh, Ngwenya, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Jerry.
Great man, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but let me raise my concern. Yesterday I called and I was put online for more than 10 minutes and I was not attended to until I had to cut because I had to play music.
We do
But
apologize about that, Jerry.
yeah, anyway, thank you very much. Anyway, uh, I want to comment about the genuine relationship versus non-beneficial relationship. And you mentioned South African relationship with the United States. Yes, previously United States, the system of United States was to support apartheid and were supported by many countries, Cuba and other countries uh, the Libyan country, Iran. You can mention countries that are rival to United States, but the question is that we did not, after democracy, support those countries back, like Cuba. We did not follow suit to support. Now, if you look at Russia, China, India, the question that of South Africa, the question South Africa is facing is how do we benefit out of those countries? You look at India, we are not benefiting much, but we see cars, Mahindra, drop here. China, we don't benefit much out of China. We see cars being dropped here. You speak of Brazil, we don't benefit much out of Brazil. We see meat, chicken dropped here or dumped here. Now you go to United States. We have a lot of support from United States, starting from economic values. I mean, if you look at companies that are built, you have Ford here, and if you look at the skills that has been transferred here, you've got Walmart. Those are employing our own people. Now, I start to become very worried that South Africa is standing alone. I mean, we've been isolated by the very same BRICS that you are mentioning, we are talking about. Because of if you look at the two countries, China and Russia, they've got a very big relationship, a big trade deal. So it doesn't make sense anymore. And I don't blame the South African government going to America. They had to do it. I'm supporting it, fully supporting it, because of you look NATO. South Africa is actually a big trade to NATO. I'm employed by the German company myself. My friends, they're employed by German companies, BMW, VW. You can mention Toyota Japan. You can mention a lot of companies here. Ford, United States. And if you look what Ford is doing in Mamelodi, they are developing the community. They're giving people energy internship. They are transferring skills. They're employing over 6,000 employees, 4,000 direct and over 2,000 to 3,000, which is indirect. But you make sense out of what to do to develop a country. It is to have a genuine trade deal with the country. And unfortunately, that yes, United States previously was supporting apartheid. However, the civil movements within America were supporting South Africans, including the Joe Biden, who was very much pro blacks and against apartheid regime back then. So it is not all doom and gloom out of America. It is a system that was supported by minority, but the majority of the civil movement, including the Martin Luther King Jr., you can mention a lot of Malcolm X, you can mention them, even pastors. They were supporting South Africa. Now, I am saying that it is time that we solidify our relationship with the United States. I understand at some stage message that we are facing the Palestinian case, and of which, if ever it came to a push, we will be compelled to push to a corner because of if you look South African, the majority of South Africans, I mean, we're unemployed, young people, over 50,000, I mean, 50% of American, I mean, of South African youth are unemployed. And you look at what America does to South Africa, it's huge. So unfortunately, we will have to stick with America. I understand, yes, somehow strategically, diplomatically, at the ICJ, we are not with them, but you look at the business that we have strategically, we are standing with the United States because I think Ramaphosa going there in front of China and Russia, the whole world, the BRICS, is to send a strong message that we are talking about the relationship, the so-called BRICS, but you're not doing nothing. During COVID-19, they did not even bring free medicine here.
Yeah.
We built our own plant in Kabeja. They did not support it. So it's an unfortunate part, my sister, that for the survival of the country, we have to stick with the United States because of they are giving us a lot in terms of employment and development. And you look at their quality, the product, the quality product is genuine. China, I've got 2 items here. I'm very much angry, my sister. They are fake. That's just mad. So that is the fact that we are facing, that BRICS does not work for South Africa. It
Jerry.
does not. And if ever it works, maybe your guest can give me an example of that.
All right,
Thank you,
Jerry. Thank you very much. And that's Jerry from Letlabile. Maybe just very quickly going back to Thabiso. Thabiso, you have heard what Jerry had to say. Maybe your own political view on some of the stance that he's brought about. I mean, he is for the relationship of the US and the SA, but also quite slamming the BRICS relationship.
We speak of foreign policy, we need to reach mutual understanding. No country must threaten another country in order to achieve its personal interest. Remember, foreign policy means that when 2 countries meet and discuss on issues, they need to have a mutual understanding that will benefit both countries. But remember how America under Donald Trump has made some drastic decision by imposing tariffs of up to 31% on certain South African imports. So, but however, to this day, these tariffs are currently on a 90-day pause. But we need to, and also remember the executive that Donald Trump signed by cutting some of the foreign aid to South Africa and also opening some refugee status for white farmers. But at this age and time, we need to understand that if we are to go into America and say, let us bind and reach a conclusion or a consensus whereby we discuss to work together, let it not be one-sided. You see, it must be mutual and have a political understanding that we stand together as countries. But again, remember, we have BRICS on the other side. As much as countries are allowed to have different organizations where they engage with. So BRICS on the other side, as he mentioned, most of the key points and facts on how BRICS is ill-treating South Africa on certain matters of national importance. But if ever we are to go to bed with America at this stage in time, we need to understand that whatever Donald Trump proposes and whatever Ramaphosa speaks, it's something that is mutual to the media, not to wake up one day to Donald Trump saying we're going to impose more tariffs, where on the other side, President Cyril Ramaphosa will say we need to sit down and not be bullied by America. We're going to go and explore other alternative economic ties with countries in Europe, countries in Asia, because whenever tariffs have been imposed to us, that means we need to go out and look for other countries in Asia and Europe and Africa so that we strengthen our economy on international level.
Let's now take Jabulani and Mamelodi, who also wants to come in to the conversation. Jabulani, you're live on Power 987. Talk to me.
Good morning, First Spirit, and good morning to Thabiso.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, you know, First Spirit, this topic is not going to end now. And it's going to take forever. And the reason why I'm saying that is because beggars will never choose us. And South Africa has positioned itself to be beggars. And then it will never stop to be, actually, we'll have to actually succumb to any pressure that comes from all directions. Because as it is right now, I think Donald Trump has made it very clear during his campaign and after he was inaugurated for the second time to be the president of America, that he wants to make America great again. That is why he was actually signing all those executive orders. And my fear is that the level of inferiority that South Africa displayed is shocking in all fronts, is just shocking. If you look at the hour that they've spent at the Oval House, not behind closed doors, but in view of the whole world, most of the time, they were not discussing the bread and butter issues. They were just threatened right through the way with all these things that were happening in the country, which probably maybe they should have taken advantage of that. My question now is that what is it that they are going to do about issues that we are faced with domestically? Because that's where the problem is. We are so less attractive because of what is happening here in South Africa. And the biggest issue here is crime. Even if this crime issue was misconstrued, but to a large extent, crime remains a very big problem in South Africa. And you can't even quantify anything in the country currently as we speak, because even the population were being misled because of this voluminous influx of people that cannot be accounted for. And that is a problem on its own. And South Africa now is going to be used as a gutter and a conduit, to access Africa. And the other problem is that we are looking like being happy. It was just Africa Day yesterday or the day before yesterday. But I don't know why should we celebrate that day, because we are not united. We are just not united. We are lying. We are looking like being happy. We are not happy. Same applies with BRICS. We are looking like being happy, like being good partners with. We are not. There's a very high level of contradiction, Pretty. Maybe I don't want even to monologue about this issue. Yeah, we need to enter into a dialogue.
In many ways, more than one, Jabulani, I certainly agree with you.
Yeah.
You're not the only person who's painted South Africa with the brush of South Africans being beggars in this whole situation, where we now need to go and plead our case and practically beg to have a relationship with the U.S. And I get where you are coming from, and I get the frustration.
And it doesn't mean that we don't have a bargaining power.
Most
we
certainly
do have a bargaining power. It's just that the problem is we are led by people who don't actually share empathy with us. And the transaction that took place there, even if it might be looking big, it will help just a few people. But those are big transactions that were spoken of there, And this thing of talking about BEE and all of those things, I know they want to replace it with equity equivalence and all of those nonsense, But it doesn't help anyone. What needs to happen is that people must start doing something,
Yeah.
They say when they say mudidi wa matepe. You need to position yourself like that sometimes so that you can have a sleep at night. Because right now we are busy borrowing, doing all these things. We are not self-reliant. We are behaving as if America owes us something. They don't owe us anything. We can copy from them and make South Africa great again. There's nothing wrong about that. We can still do it. We are behaving as if it's just these bodies that we have. We don't have heads. There's something fundamentally wrong in South Africa, which need to be fixed here. And we don't need validation and approval to do that. We can still do that. And that is why you find a man like Donald Trump doing what he's doing. Because it's opportune for him to do that because of the crime rate that we are faced with in this country. Yeah.
And I think that's our
crime is a problem, and it's a disaster. And I don't know what barometer are they using to declare something a disaster.
All right, Jabulani, let me go back to Tabiso and get his
Thank you
political
very
stance on this as well. Thank you, Jabulani. Tabiso, your political view on this statement as well. I think, a lot of people have been painted with, a lot of South Africans have painted the Oval Office meeting with the very same brush of appearing as big as now we are officially trying to force, and it's not even really a relationship that is as healthy as most people might deem it to be. What's your stance on this?
Well, as much as I've mentioned that the former minister, Naledi Pandor, and the president during the State of the Nation address that will not be bullied by any country, and he was referring to the U.S. Now, remember the U.S. under Donald Trump has made drastic imposes of tariffs and also the executive order. Remember, another issue was on the land reform policies, which includes the expropriation of land that was passed by the South African government earlier this year. Now, if we are to please the Americans, that means we must revisit and revise the expropriation land bill. So I agree with the caller that we should not always appear as beggars, as much as we have our own sovereign power there, and we also need to make sure that we deal with issues which are internally without involving other countries from the outside, despite making sure that we maintain clear image on the international level and making sure that in terms of the geopolitics of whether South Africa to America, South Africa to Russia, we maintain peace. But however, in maintaining peace, one can never be in two places at the same time. So that is why the Americans continues to push for South Africa to take a decision whether it sides with them or it sides with the Eastern Bloc. But now, here's an issue that we are faced with. As we went to the Oval House, remember how in most cases the exchange was between the president and Mr. Rupert, and when it came to the president, he would normally address the president in a manner that it doesn't allow him to provide answers. Remember, he even showed him pictures of white genocide. He showed him the video of Julius Malema chanting that apartheid song. That was a struggle song during the apartheid era. Yeah. But however, what the President of the United States did was to undermine our leaders, was to make us beggars on international level, while we also provide America and supply it with most of the minerals. We also supply it in the agricultural sector and manufacturing sector. So in certain cases, if America wants us to build a relationship with them, they should not dictate on how our policies and our policies on land reform, how they should be. Because remember, when the expropriation land bill was introduced, it was because there's certain land that the government need to use that is not being used. We have the government land, and we have land that was taken by the white people without compensation to black people. And we know that is one serious issue that is on national level that needs to be addressed. So America needs to also look at how they address people who they deem as their partners in international level. So what Donald Trump did and continues to do, if ever we go there again and beg him or apologize and say, this is not what is happening, this is what is happening, we need to ask ourselves, as much as they produce work in the tech industry, in the mining industry and manufacturing industry, but he need to understand that we also have internal issues that needs to be dealt with without being pressurized on how we deal with other countries internationally. Imagine now if we are to look at the the intra-Africa trade. If Donald Trump says we should not allow free trade with Burkina Faso, so that means South Africa will have to abide by that in order to maintain a positive image with America. So it becomes wrong.
I want us to get into AGOA just very quickly before we go to Angela in Pretoria, who also wants to be a part of the conversation, but we'll wrap up our time together with that statement. We are under the impression that AGOA was left outside when it comes to the Oval Office. However, I think President Cyril Ramaphosa has emphasized that as South Africans, we would like to have a continued relationship with them. What does this mean for us if we should continue with the relationship?
Remember, when it comes to AGOA, yes, the president emphasized on the issue that we need to renew again after September, so that we allow for a duty access and free, and most of the things that we trade with America will be have less tariffs. But however, at this stage in time, we are now exploring other economic markets in Asia and Europe. So at this stage in time, the issue of AGOA remains uncertain. But however, if ever we do not continue with it, we have other means of economic ties that we are working on with European countries and Asian countries, especially with China and Russia. But however, we need to make sure that we also strengthen our intra-Africa trade and make sure that whether from the Southern African Community Development, whether ECOWAS and the whole of Africa, we remain and commit to making sure that we trade freely with African countries and making sure that the economy circulates within Africa. So that will also improve South Africa's economy.
All right, let's take Angela. Angela, good morning to you. Welcome to Power 987.
Morning to everyone also who's listening at this night.
Talk to me, Angela.
More than anything, I think we lack leadership. And I've always stated this because I'm a frequent caller for years at Power FM. We lack leadership. It's a pity that ANC, as we are pushing it out, deliberately so, it's time, it rests, it's time we realize that, they are no longer serving the people of South Africa as they are expected. They've been expected for the past 3 decades. You know, when today William Gumede, I think he's a professor from Wits School of Governance, he was dissecting the BEE, which is something that we've been so curious as to understand. Who does it benefit? People are shouting BEE, but at the end of the day, who does it benefit? And today it was clear that it's recycled between the ANC people. It benefits the ANC people. It's got nothing to do with people of this country in general, particularly the black people. Black people who fought for this ANC to be in power. And today we are saying really it's time for us to realize that, no, guys, the narrative that we are supporting with ANC, it's not what it's supposed to be benefiting us as South Africans. We find ourselves in this situation with the U.S. today begging, not being able to stand there and educate U.S. like Nelson Mandela did. You know, Mandela was once confronted by ANC when he came out of jail. They were trying to also align ANC not to support other countries. And he was very clear with the stance of South Africa. But today we have leaders like Ramaphosa who have no interest of the country. You find today people are glorifying your Traores. They're glorifying that all these army mongers, the Rwandan leaders, because those people have decided to prioritize their own people in terms of development. That is socio-economic and political development. You look inside before you look outside. And if we can sit today and try to dissect what has ANC developed its own people, you'll be very shocked. We are busy counting U.S. development in South Africa. No, it's true, the funding and everything. But who does it serve? That's the vehicle that ANC is using to loot the money. Those NGOs, those NPOs, as much as they help in the country, but majority of that money cannot be counted for because they loot that money. We have a youth today which is despondent. You'll never find ANC people coming here and try to tell us what do we do with this youth that is lingering on drugs, that is highly unemployed. You realize that they are killing the youth so that the youth cannot be able to stand on their own and fight this useless government that we are getting. They are literally killing our people, guys. And we will find ourselves talking one and the same thing because we are so scared. The crime that you are talking about in this country, same South Africans are crying about crime. It's the porous borders which were intentionally opened so that people can come and compete with South African skills. And how do you compete with a hungry person who can take a cheap labor, who is taken advantage of because the labor rights are not supposed to be covering them? These employees are taking advantage of these foreign nationals to spite our own youth so that we can find them useless. Guys, you need to stand up and see that what you expected ANC to do in the US, they are no longer capable. It's not the ANC we want. Ramaphosa is not what is wanted by black South Africans in this country. He's very transactional like Trump. I've always said so. When Ramaphosa goes out now, he'll be more richer than when he entered because he's that type of a person. He understands the language. How do you carry a book of 14 kilograms when you know Trump doesn't read? I feel very disgusted, to be honest, that we are busy talking one and the same thing. Let's remove these people. Let's restructure the GNU that will come again. Let's repeat the GNU, but let's restructure the politicians which are going to be inside. Never ever give power to DA. Use DA to monitor. Let's support our own youth, guys. Let's support our own black politicians. Those are the ones who will chant the front in terms of the Pan-Africanism that needs to build this country. We need to build this country. ANC has destroyed this country. I don't understand how people don't see that. Thank you very much.
Angela, thank you so much for your time. I think a very upset Angela there from Pretoria, Tabi, so emphasizing on the fact that a lot of the youth is just being belittled at this point, and they're not being granted opportunities as significant to make the change and to make an impression in our country that is long lasting. And I think one of the main reasons as well that our president also indicated was to create job opportunities for the youth in our country as he embarks on this journey, which was one of the many statements that were also added as part of the list. Maybe in your own perspective as well, let's get insight in terms of some of the allegations that Angela has also posed, mentioning that, the opening of borders is basically a huge threat that works towards destroying the youth and painting them once again as useless.
The issue of opening of borders, let us look at it in this way, that even during the campaign of national elections last year, we had parties like Action SA, we had Patriotic Alliance, parties which were vocal and against the opening of borders, because what Angela is saying is true. When a person from our neighboring country comes to South Africa and works in a restaurant, even when they are not paid, they are only paid with tips, they would not disagree with that. But for a South African who understands that the minimum wage is 3.2 to 3.7, so they then see it as being belittled, as Angelina mentioned. So such issues are issues that we need to look at. And again, as much as she mentioned that we should use the DA as a monitoring party in the government of national unity. But however, remember, if we are to, we do believe in supporting our black leaders, but remember sometimes political ideologies differ even within the political parties of black leaders. For example, EFF and MK can never form one strong opposition to say, let us be an official opposition and fight against the government of national unity, because they have their own internal issues where they do not agree on certain matters. But however, the issue of opening border again has opened to the high rise in crime. And again, with that being said, we know that some come to South Africa because they are employed maybe in certain fields of which are regarded as scarce skills. But however, we know that some skills are skills that can be trained to South Africans, because charity begins at home. But whenever you jump a person at home and go for a person in a neighboring country as a first preference, it becomes a problem.
I think that's all the time we have, Tabe. So quite a very deep conversation, and thank you once again. I think before I part ways with you, just very quickly, do you think the meeting did justice in terms of obliterating some of the false accusations that have been pointed at South Africa, genocide claims?
I don't think the meeting did any justice, because what was happening there was just a business transaction. We've seen how Rupert would speak about businesses that are needed in South Africa and how they should go on about it. But at the end of the day, what was discussed there, South Africa went there to beg. They did not go there to say, we are standing on what we are proposing in terms of expropriation, the Expropriation of Land Act. So South Africa went there to say, what can we do to make sure that our foreign relations remains smooth and that we do not have any political or economic sanctions that are being forced on South Africa. So what happened in the Oval Office was nothing but South Africa begging for mercy in the US.
Tabiso, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure having a conversation with you.
Thank you, Sister Pretty.
A very hectic conversation, and I think we can go on. I see the lines are also buzzing, and it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm going to take some of your comments and give you this opportunity for 15 minutes to wrap up your thoughts when it comes to the conversation. I know that there's so many emotions. The craziest part about it is that it also goes deep back into some of the historical moments where we see that Nelson Mandela as well also had a few roles that he played in really keeping the peace and the relationship, but also saying it should have been a mutual benefit for everyone. That's the kind of peace and relationship that Nelson Mandela built, and not one that was biased to any party, whether it was the donor or recipient, between any or. But we find ourselves in a situation where we are now being labeled as beggars. We have been accused of genocide. And Jabulani clearly points out that we do have the power to refrain from being beggars. We've got sufficient resources that can really aid us into being the actual creators and the ones that really generate the power and the amount of needs that we have in South Africa. And then Angela also adds on to that by saying that maybe it's time to give the youth an opportunity. Nobody wants to give the youth an opportunity. And that's where it's quite puzzling. That's where it really loses, or maybe that's the twist, the plot twist. Why are the young people not given an opportunity? Why are they not being funded? Why are they not being supported? And why are they not being given the time or place to be able to practice and really showcase some of the good stuff that they are able to do? I don't know. I truly don't know. Do give us a call and let me hear what you have to say before we wrap up this conversation. We'll get into the next conversation with Rafidwe Manyama, who is the senior financial advisor, as we get into some of the insurance scams. It's not a now thing, it's not an old thing, it's been happening, but where do we draw the line is the biggest question. 0861987000 at Power FM 987. Use the hashtag PowerZone to share some of your thoughts.